Edward Snowden. I'm sure you all remember his groundbreaking revelations in 2013 that the NSA had these mass surveillance programs, they were spying on everyone. And yesterday, a federal appeals court declared that all of these bulk collection programs that the NSA was running are illegal. And they credited Edward Snowden for his revelations about what the NSA was doing about their mass surveillance and data collection programs. So Edward Snowden, he tweeted this. 7 years ago, as the news declared I was being charged as a criminal for speaking the truth, I never imagined that I would live to see our courts condemn the NSA's activities as unlawful and, in the same ruling, credit me for exposing them. So the BBC also reports in this article that the U.S. Court of Appeals has ruled intelligence leaders who publicly defended the program lied. You remember James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, lying to Congress?
So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
And I just wanted to point out in this article from Reuters, when they say, quote, Snowden, who fled to Russia in the aftermath of the 2013 disclosures. No, he didn't flee to Russia. He didn't flee to Russia. He was trapped in Russia by the US. He was trying to go to Latin America, right? So he was in Hong Kong, and then his connecting flight was from Moscow. And so they trapped him there. They canceled his passport outright. He couldn't travel anymore. He ended up having to live in the airport for about a month or something out of a closet. I mean, Joe Biden personally and John Kerry, they phoned and called up all of these European nations who were contemplating giving him asylum and threatened them not to give him any asylum. And then on top of it, they canceled his passport while he was in Russia. So it would be easier to smear him. How convenient, right? Oh, you see, he's in Russia. He's working for the Kremlin, and then they don't tell you the part that his passport was canceled. They don't tell you that part. Conveniently. Much easier to just paint him as working for the Russians than actually focus on the revelations that he exposed. So in the BBC article, it reads, following the revelation, officials said the NSA surveillance program had played a crucial role in fighting domestic terrorism, including the convictions of 4 men from San Diego for providing aid to al-Shabaab militants in Somalia. But on Wednesday, the Court of Appeal said the claims were, quote, inconsistent with the contents of the classified records, and the program had violated the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. So over here, Julian Assange builds upon this and says that the upshot of this Ninth Circuit opinion is that the NSA's bulk phone record collection was illegal and probably unconstitutional, but it doesn't matter because the program was also worthless. So I want to read you this quick summary that was prepared by the court staff in the court ruling. It says the panel held that the government may have violated the Fourth Amendment, when it collected the telephony metadata of millions of Americans, including at least one of the defendants, pursuant to FISA, but that suppression is not warranted on the facts of this case. Having carefully reviewed the classified FISA applications and all related classified information, the panel was convinced that under established Fourth Amendment standards, the metadata collection, even if unconstitutional, did not taint the evidence introduced by the government at trial. The panel wrote that to the extent the public statements of government officials created a contrary impression, that impression is inconsistent with the contents of the classified record. The big takeaway here is not only that the whole thing was illegal, we know that, it violates the Fourth Amendment, right? But on top of it, it's worthless. The whole thing is worthless. Within 24 hours of 9/11, David Addington, who was Dick Cheney's lawyer, the vice president's lawyer at the time, they go and write up these executive orders to begin mass surveillance. Okay? It's already illegal from the beginning. They don't even tell Congress. They don't tell anybody. You have maybe a room full of people who know about it. And every 45 days, they have to go to the Department of Justice and they have to sign off on it. It took years before they tried to legalize it through Congress, which is very scary because in the end, anyone who protested at the NSA, they were fired and then they tried to use the 1917 Espionage Act against them. They threatened the press, and all the people in Congress who protested against it were silenced. And ultimately, they legalized what was illegal. So ultimately, what used to be the Presidential Surveillance Program was integrated into FISA and the Protect America Act, which Congress gladly codified into law. They legalized the surveillance program. Okay? So we know from the start that it was wrong. It was unconstitutional, and it was being done in secret. And all of this in the name of the war on terror, right? Oh, we have to do this because there could be these sleeper cells. Remember that? If you were watching television, if you had the misfortune of watching TV in 2000 and 2001, you remember these sleeper cells, the terror cells that are hidden everywhere, trying to instill fear in the general public. And so that's why they had to do this, right? They had to violate people's constitutional rights. They had to violate people's human rights all over the world and bomb them and kill them, all in the name of the war on terror. Well, it turns out it's worthless. This hasn't helped stop a single terrorist act. None of it. I mean, even if you look at what happened in France, right, just a few years ago, the plotters were using SMS. SMSs are unencrypted. They were already known to French intelligence and other intelligence agencies. They always are. The guy who killed Lee Rigby in the UK, the attackers in London, all of these terrorists are always known beforehand to the governments. Even the hijackers, right? On 9/11, they know about these people. They used to fund them, remember? They know exactly who these people are. There's no illusion or confusion about who to watch out for. No, it's just an excuse. It's bogus. And don't forget, it's not just the United States. You have GCHQ in the UK also participating in this bulk collection of data. They have the 5 Eyes program, the 9 Eyes, 14 Eyes. So all of these countries are effectively complicit in these mass surveillance programs, and yet they're completely useless and don't help whatsoever in keeping people safe and preventing attacks as they claim they do. But here we have a court asserting that, yes, this stuff was completely unwarranted, no pun intended, and in violation of constitutional rights and also ineffectual. What about Edward Snowden? They used his revelations. It's thanks to him that we know about all of these illegal mass surveillance programs. And they directly credited him in this new ruling at the Federal Appeals Court. And moreover, stated that these programs are unconstitutional and illegal and worthless. So what happens to him? Does he get pardoned? Why isn't he being pardoned? We already saw 2 weeks ago when Trump was asked the question and just even contemplating pardoning Snowden. He said he'd look into it. Oh, Susan Rice and Liz Cheney and Bill Kristol, they all went wild about it. Like, how dare you? Oh, he's a traitor. Unfortunately, I just don't think that Edward Snowden would be given a fair trial, let alone outright pardoned. Because just like you saw what happened to Chelsea Manning, she was tortured. Her sentence was commuted by Obama on his last day in office, but then she was dragged all the way back into prison and slapped with a huge fine and put through even more torment. Look at what they're trying to do to Julian Assange. Trying to imprison him for 170 years. And we know damn well, as I covered in this other video, if we look at the lawyers for Assange open letter, he won't be given a fair trial. No one is given a fair trial. I mean, just the fact that you're being charged with the 1917 Espionage Act for journalism and whistleblowing means you're being treated unfairly already, and these charges are bogus. So we know from the get-go that this is going to be a kangaroo court. It's going to be a show trial, and he will be judged most likely from people who also work in the intelligence community, right? So I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. Going back to what I said before, again, pay attention. Even though this was all illegal from day one, they legalized it, okay? They made a push within Congress to expand the mass surveillance programs, to give them more funding, and to extend their reach. And when Barack Obama was given these programs, he specifically chose not just to keep them, but to expand them even more, okay? And even though the appeals court over here is saying that these programs are ineffective, complete waste of time and money, and also illegal, I don't think it's going to help Edward Snowden's case, unfortunately, because you have to remember that both the Republicans and the Democrats, just like you've seen with all these senior figures and also with Barack Obama, love the surveillance state. They love the surveillance state. This is a cornerstone of U.S. hegemony and the military-industrial complex and the global surveillance state. So they're not going to concede anything in this regard. And Joe Biden himself, who is now the Democratic nominee, he did his best to punish Edward Snowden and make sure that he could not find asylum in other countries. So both parties are in favor of these programs. They're not going anywhere, unfortunately. And Edward Snowden, I don't think, will be pardoned, unfortunately. So that's a shame. And I just want to underscore that even though the U.S. Court of Appeals says these programs, mass surveillance programs, were ineffective and illegal, it doesn't mean anything. And so when Americans come up and tell you, oh, we live in a democracy, look, we have an executive branch, we have a judiciary, and we have a legislative branch, and we even have the media. And the media, they hold the other three branches accountable. They're the fourth pillar in our democracy. All of this is horseshit. It doesn't exist. It's a fantasy. The media works on behalf of all these three other branches who work together. So even though this court made that decision, okay, it doesn't change anything. The mass surveillance programs will continue like nothing happened. The mass media, the mainstream media, will not cover this. And if they do, they will still call Edward Snowden a traitor. And so they will make sure that even though, maybe on paper, legally speaking, we have a clear-cut decision, the general public will not be informed correctly on this. And they will still be brainwashed into thinking that whistleblowers who expose unconstitutional crimes, who expose the wrongdoings of the government, are monsters and traitors. What's ironic also is that this entire conversation here is about Americans. So they say that these programs were in violation of Americans' Fourth Amendment and Americans' rights. Yeah, what about the rest of the world? Like, it's okay to spy on everyone else? Yeah, I mean, there's even spying on their own allies. Angela Merkel's phone, for example. I mean, they're spying on countries allied to them. Not just random people as well. But there's no mention of that, right? Because Americans are exceptional, of course. Nonetheless, I did want to report on this because it is groundbreaking, and it once again underscores and underlines the importance of whistleblowers, of journalists who do their jobs, who actually get real information out there, even if it's costly, even if it's unpopular, even if it chastises them and they are vilified by the entire political apparatus within and without. So once again, hats off to Edward Snowden, to Glenn Greenwald, to Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange,